And some people come to Earth and they want to experience a very earthly kind of experience and very physical experience. And while others choose to explore the universe and the spirit realms, is there any preference for souls to decide what they want to experience? Or what is that based on? Why are some people choosing one thing and others the other?
Why do you choose what you do, and why do others choose what they do? It's personal preference. It's what you believe you need for your own growth, for your own experience. There's no other outside preference that determines this. It's always up to you to determine what it is you believe you need next.
Okay. And you said that angels are the first reflection of all that is. Does that mean on a very high level that we as individuals contain the consciousness of the angels?
Yes, and you are contained in the consciousness of angels.
And one person was asking about interacting with all that is, like, do we have a different experience of all that is than the Essassani beings do? And same thing for angels. Do they have a completely different perspective of all that is than we do?
I would think that would be relatively self-evident. Of course
Right.
They do, because they're on a different level and see things in different ways.
So how about for your society, the way that you experience all that is versus us as humans at our level?
Well, as we said, our daily experience is as if walking through different dimensions, as if dreaming while awake. We experience multiple realities simultaneously and can keep it all in order, because that's the way we function at this particular point in our evolutionary space. So it's similar to the idea of recognizing that there may be different levels or representations or collectives that exist that might represent oversouls and angels and what have you. And we interact with them according to the synchronism in our society that determines when and where it's appropriate to do so. But we still experience most everything as a kind of dreamlike collective that allows us to extract whatever information we require at that moment as individuals from the collective that we're interacting with.
And this person here is saying that I'm amazed by you as quasi-physical beings being able to keep a balance between the conscious energy state and a persona state. So by following your teachings, I had an experience that is beyond the best thing my mind could ever imagine. And I'm curious, how do you balance the two states so well? Once I'm in a state of love, it is very challenging for me to use the perspective of my ego. Does this make sense to you?
Yes. Well, the simple answer is practice, like anything. The more you do it, the better you get at it. Our civilization at this point in its evolutionary path has been doing it for so long that it's actually more of a challenge for us to not do that, to not be in that state of balance. We actually have to really try hard to get out of balance at this point, because there's a momentum, there's an inertia to the idea of something you do over and over and over again. But don't necessarily judge the ego itself as negative. You can maintain the idea of a persona, which is all the ego is, keeping you focused in physical reality, and still experience the great connections and balance of unconditional love of all that is through the interpretation that is appropriate for physical reality. So it's not about getting rid of the ego, it's about allowing the ego to simply act as a conduit in the way that's appropriate for the physical ego to do so, to experience unconditional love and connection of everything in life, in physical terms.
And this person is saying, I love ETs like crazy. I talk about ETs all day. It's my total passion. I feel my heart is expanded a lot, and I feel such deep love. Why do I love ETs? What's going on?
Well, again, you recognize the connection to other selves, other parallel realities that your greater consciousness is connected to. It's also an expression of self-love, that you're willing to open up to more of yourself in that way. And more of your total self will contain the idea of extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional expressions of consciousness, just as it contains expressions of spirit as well. So you're just connecting to more of yourself and falling in love with yourself in different ways.
Okay. And this person was saying, you've mentioned that diseases are caused by distorted beliefs. I don't think you used the word distorted, but that's the one they use.
Fear-based, negative, yes.
And they're saying that when they were 3 years old, they got tuberculosis and they almost died.
Yes.
What beliefs could I have had at that time that would give me such a disease? Was it infectious, like tuberculosis, something that I wanted to experience, or is it just a disease?
Well, first and foremost, this is a multi-layered question. Remember that souls can actually come into physical reality with a theme of exploration already at hand. That can represent the idea or stand in for the concept of having beliefs that will cause certain things to happen so that they can fulfill the theme of their exploration. Even a child, even at birth, will start to absorb whatever beliefs are in that society that will serve them in creating that theme, that experience that they have decided to explore, not only for their own purposes, but perhaps even for other people's purposes around them. Sometimes souls will choose to experience a disease at a young age, not just because of what it might do for their own experience as a soul, but what it might actually cause other people to choose to do that are surrounding that particular child that has the disease. In other words, what are you and others learning they otherwise wouldn't have learned if the child didn't have the disease? So there can be many reasons for this. It's not necessarily about the idea of the child having enough experience to have chosen or absorbed those beliefs through the idea of living, but just absorbing them telepathically for the idea of constructing whatever experience they need to construct in order to play out the theme that they chose to assist themselves and others.
And does the replacement of a damaged human body organ with machine parts mean spiritual degeneration? And will human beings take the road of being half human and half machine in the future?
It does not deteriorate the spirit. Again, as long as consciousness has an appropriate vehicle to express itself through in its fullness of being, there is no idea of degeneration. The idea of being human doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot have what you would call artificial machine parts. It's all about the collective whole of what expression is capable coming through the idea of an organic or a synthetic particular construct. So it's really all about the ability of those parts still allowing for the fullest expression of the consciousness that would be there even if the being was wholly organic. Remember, even organics are a different form of construction, a different form of machine. The materials are not so much the issue as it is what the materials are capable of allowing the consciousness to express. You can have a fully synthetic being that expresses full consciousness. Is that being human? It depends on what you refer to as human. But is it a full expression of consciousness like any other conscious being? Yes, it can be. And therefore it may be irrelevant as to whether it's technically human or not.
Okay, and can you help us understand a little more about the idea of eating meat and plants on this planet, and whether or not the negative effects that are caused by eating meat on our environment indicates that in order to be a more evolved being, you need to give that up, or is it actually necessary for us at this stage in development?
Again, a very generalized question, still based on the idea that it's important to look at every individual and what they truly need. Some individuals may still require the absorption of meat protein. Many may not. And yes, in general, it's usually representative of a higher vibration to eat things that, in your terms, are less dense or created through more negative means, which can create a more negative vibration in those substances. But again, if you allow yourself to go back to a more natural way of absorbing the meat protein in terms of how the meat protein is collected, how the respect is given, how the exchange happens in a more natural, original, organic way, then individuals that may require meat protein can absorb it without the idea of the negative concept behind how it was raised or how it was caught or how it was killed. But again, yes, in general, humans are evolving to the point where you may find simply no desire and no need anymore to absorb more dense substances and can subsist quite readily on some of the less dense substances. And even the idea of meat protein is still more about the plants, because really you're getting what you need from the plants that the animal ate, more than you are from the meat itself, which is really functioning more as a carrier for the substances that they ate that are passed on to you when you consume them.
So the fact that in our society now, we're starting to be able to do things like grow meat in laboratories so that we don't have to kill animals in order to eat that. And taking that along with the idea that isn't one of the attractions of coming to Earth and having this very physical experience, part of the attraction of being here, the dining experience, so to speak, seems to be very attractive to perhaps be. But are beings in spirit, can they also experience eating and dining and doing all that?
They can, but most of them simply find it unnecessary. If they wish to have an experience, they can create it instantaneously. But the idea is it's not quite the same as physical reality. There are different levels of pleasures to it, and some may even be greater than what you experience in physical reality. But again, most usually let go of that and simply create environments that they may enjoy that are similar, but not necessarily requiring them to seem to be ingesting anything in order to experience and get out of that environment the same thing they might have gotten out of eating in restaurants when they were physically alive.
And so these...
But one moment. The idea of creating meats artificially can be a step in the direction of the evolution, but you're going to find ultimately that will probably be unnecessary. Because again, more of you may gravitate towards simply eating natural foods that are grown naturally, that are given from the earth naturally, and most of that will most likely ultimately be plant material. You will simply not need the idea of artificial meat eventually, but it can be part of a weaning process if you wish.
But isn't it, it's not really artificial meat because it is they use the cells in a
artificially constructed
meat. Okay. So, but it's a good intermediary step, yes?
It can be. It depends on the person.
Okay. All right. And lastly, there's an indication that there seems to be an intensification of the splitting prisms phenomenon.
Oh, yes.
Why is this, and how will it transform? And is this the beginning of the end of this stage, or will it just continue intensifying as we go forward?
It will intensify to a certain point, but beyond that, it will only intensify in realities that require it to intensify. The idea is that, again, as the splitting prism continues, those that will be navigating themselves toward versions of Earth that no longer require the same kind of intensity in their experience will no longer experience it, even though there may be versions where the intensity does grow and continue because it's leading down a different kind of a path. So there will be a point at which the intensity in that sense will diminish for those that go to certain versions, and it will continue to grow for those that choose other pathways.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for all the information and your sharing, and we really appreciate you. Thank you, Bashar.
It is our passion and our pleasure and our deepest appreciation to all of you for the power and strength that you show and demonstrate every single day in making the choices that are true for you and being a living example of the choices that others could choose, but also having the strength and wisdom to allow them to choose their path, no matter how different it may be from yours, because in the end, all come home. Now, please allow yourselves to relax and enjoy your meditative exercise.
Okay, and these are some questions about love, particularly self-love. One person is wondering, how can we get to self-love if we don't really know what it feels like? Having been brought up in a situation where they were conditioned to be very self-critical and not have self-acceptance, and not really having that muscle memory of what that state is like to fully accept yourself. How can a person see past all of these negative self-identity issues and really experience the feeling of self-love?
This is where the power of paradox once again comes in. As we have said many times, you may feel powerless, but you're using your power to create that feeling of powerlessness. You may feel disconnected, but you're using your connection to all that is to create the experience of disconnection. So by understanding that you may be criticizing yourself, ask the question, why would I bother to criticize myself if I didn't love myself enough to do so? Because criticizing myself can be used to bring myself back into alignment if I find myself out of alignment. So use the idea of being critical, not in a negative way, but in a positive recognition that the only reason you would be critiquing yourself is because you love yourself enough to do so. And once you realize it from that perspective, you will actually paradoxically not be quite as critical in the negative way, but you will always check in with yourself to make sure that you are choosing the things that are truly vibrationally in alignment and compatible with who you prefer to be. It will change its quality. It will change its feeling. You will still check in, but it won't be a negative criticism. It will be an awareness of the idea of misalignment as opposed to alignment. You'll use it as an aligning tool and not a self-negative judgment on yourself for simply having gone out of alignment.
And what is human love? Is it connection to ourselves? Is there any relationship, such as romantic, family, or otherwise, that's there to help us connect to ourselves and be more of who we really are? And why would a person feel a deep desire to love and be loved? Is it a childhood need that hasn't been fulfilled? Or is it just about really being your full self?
There can be many circumstances in which you can relate the idea of feeling the need to be loved to a childhood situation, but the childhood situation may only have been pointing out the idea that every single being in creation has the urge to align and connect with all that is. If you want to recognize this as a great attraction, a great magnet, so to speak, that allows you to always yearn toward the idea of harmony and alignment with all that is, then you can translate that as a need to experience love of self and everything and all that is. Because love of all that is unconditionally includes you, because you are part of all that is. And love of yourself includes all that is, again, because all that is an expression of you, and you are an expression of it. Not meaning to be too esoteric about this idea. There can be many different expressions of the idea of love. But in your society, sometimes they will get a little bit twisted, and they will get a little bit put upon in the sense of assigning a meaning to why it has to be this way, imposing a structure on it that isn't necessarily as unconditional as you may think. It's all about relationships and realizing that all relationships, as we have said, are for the purpose of each person being attracted to other people to help them become more of themselves through reflection, through dialogue, through all sorts of ways, through behavior, and each person doing the same for the other, allowing them to become more of who they are through recognition and awareness and awakening. And that is the ultimate love, is the idea that relationships are about love, unconditional love, if you're functioning as a reflective mirror for others and yourself, letting them reflect to you what you need to become more of who you are.
Okay, thank you. I want to heal conflict and rekindle my zest for life. You say to follow your passion, but I also feel like my passion is irresponsible. Can you guide me to have clear passion and to help heal the conflict within and without?
Well, we may need to have a conversation with this person about exactly why they're defining the idea of their passion as something that's irresponsible. We would need to understand what it is they are recognizing or defining as irresponsible. But nevertheless, without going into the specifics for that particular individual, if you feel that your passion is irresponsible, then you don't have a clear definition of your passion, because your true passion cannot be irresponsible. If you are being irresponsible, then you're not functioning in your passion. That's really all we can say about it, is to watch your definitions, because by definition, acting on your true passion could never actually be irresponsible, even if someone else may define it as such. If you know that it's not intentionally harming anyone or misleading anyone in any way, it's not being dishonest, it's a true representation of who and what you are at the moment, and you're able to communicate this clearly to other people and let them know who it is you truly are and what it is that is true for you as a passion, as a truth, as a core vibration for you, then you're not being irresponsible. If you hide these ideas from others, then yes, you may be being irresponsible even about your passion. But then again, you're not functioning truly in your passion if you're being irresponsible that way, by not having true open communication with people about what's going on for you and why you're choosing what it is you're choosing. Come down to the question of why you're choosing to do whatever it is you're choosing to do, and investigate with honesty within yourself about whether you're actually truly acting on a real passion, or whether it's simply your anxiety being disguised as such and then coming off as true irresponsibility.
And what about the situation where a person has a passion for a certain career and they've been following that passion and they've received lots of support from other people doing it, people have invested in them doing it, all of those things that create a bond around their passion, and then they don't feel the passion anymore and they want to change, but they feel guilty about abandoning, in a sense, all the people that have supported them in their passion.
All right, well, again, first and foremost, an honest investigation within yourself about whether it really is your passion, or whether your particular definitions are dampening it, or whether the passion is waning simply because you need to be doing something else that may not seem to be connected, but actually synchronistically will be connected and will appear to be connected once you take upon yourself the ability to do the other thing that you're able to act on that is more passionate for you than the thing you were doing a moment ago. In other words, sometimes your passion can make it seem as if you're going in a direction that isn't connected to your original passion, but may in fact be. So you may have to look at it and include that path that may seem to be disconnected and define it as part of your path, part of the original passion, to see if it will bring you back to the original thing once you have gathered whatever experience you will gather by going off on what seems to be a tangent, but ultimately may prove to be otherwise, may prove to be part of the original passion. Remember, don't judge it by how it looks. Allow yourself to know that all passion is connected to every other passion, and it's the feeling of passion that guides you to let you know that all things are connected, even if on the surface of their appearance they don't seem to be. But always investigate your own definitions to make sure you're not the one dampening the passion when the passion could be there. So the guilt may simply be an aligning energy to let you know some self-investigation needs to be done here to determine for yourself whether you are dampening the excitement through your own negative and fear-based definitions, or whether you're actually going off on another path that is part of the overall path, but doesn't seem to be right now, but you have to trust that if it really has more passion than anything else, and you're not the one dampening the original passion, then it is included in the original passion, and there's something about acting on that particular path that will be important for the original passion as well, or will take you where you need to be. And of course, all of this comes, once again, with clear communication to others about what you're going through, because they may also have some advice for you about how you may handle the situation. Be inclusive in your communication if there are those that support you, and allow them to give you some reflections that may clear up the situation for you immediately, rather than figuring this whole thing out by yourself.
Would that also apply in situations where some people like to build companies, but then once they've finished building it, they're not interested in doing it anymore? They want to go find another company to build.
Yes, perhaps, if, again, that's truly representative of their passion waning naturally. Because their passion may simply be to build companies that other people will run. That can be a definition of their passion, and creating new ones for other people to run may be the definition of their passion, sort of like planting seeds but allowing someone else to grow the flowers.
So it just requires self-examination and looking for other ways to handle the situation so that everyone can be served.
Absolutely. That may be the definition of the passion. Not every project has to come to completion with the original person. So the idea is really be honest about what your passion is, and let those that can help continue your passion in the way that serves them also serve you.
Yeah. And this person is asking about staying positive, or at least going into a neutral state. Is it necessary to release your negative beliefs in order to stay in a neutral state? Or if your negative beliefs keep coming up and you're not able to move into a neutral state, is there a permission slip or a tip that you can use to get into a neutral state?
Well, again, remember what's being defined here is one of the tools of the formula, which is the reflective mirror. As we have said, you may think you've let go of all of your negative or fear-based beliefs, but if they do keep coming up, if new ones keep coming up, that's the reflective mirror showing you, revealing to you that you may have had a few negative beliefs hiding in your unconscious mind. So the very idea of having them come up is an exciting prospect, because it allows you to let go of them by being made aware of them. If the same thing keeps coming up, all that means is you haven't really found the core negative belief that's generating that particular feeling, because remember, feelings can't exist in a vacuum. So if you feel something, it means there's a belief or a definition behind it that you're buying into. This is a golden opportunity to understand yourself and clarify yourself and become more transparent to yourself, to know thyself more clearly. It's not about arriving someplace where this doesn't happen anymore, although you can. But if you're making that more important than investigating why that came up and what you're still holding on to, then you're missing the point. Whatever's going on in the moment, whatever you're facing in the moment, whatever comes up in the moment is the most important thing that can possibly be happening at that moment, and is part of the process of why you chose to have this physical experience. So get into the idea of these things that come up, find out what you're holding on to that you don't prefer, and let it go by making it nonsensical to keep holding on to it, by making it make no sense to hold on to it. But don't necessarily negate the process. The process is clarifying you.
And how does one differentiate between anxiety and excitement?
I would think it would be self-evident if you're honest. The idea really is you can tell the difference. And this is why we have shared with you questions like, well, if I did move forward in this way, what am I afraid might happen? Because that will reveal any anxieties that might be within you that you were unaware of. And if the whole path is truly anxiety being disguised as passion, because you're afraid to face something within yourself, asking that question will reveal that to you as well. So again, this is why we give you those questions. What would I have to believe is true about myself in this situation in order to feel the way I do, or in order to be confused about whether I'm feeling excitement or anxiety? You can put the question in that form as well. Or again, if I did move forward in what I believe to be my passion, what am I afraid might happen? And that will usually reveal, if you're willing to hear the answer with honesty, that will usually reveal whether what you're doing is actually part of your passion or not.
And what about in the situation where someone has kind of ADD or some version of that, where bright, shiny object, oh, that's exciting. Oh, I'll run after that. Oh, what about that? And then can't really stay focused on, is that an indication that there's underlying anxiety that is driving that?
Yes, because the idea of ADD, in a sense, energetically, is an avoidance issue of facing something that would actually allow them to stabilize in the present. They're avoiding the present because they have a belief that something in the present is too painful for them to experience. So they're distracted by every shiny object that keeps them out of the present.